Welcome to the AI Chat podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Today on the podcast, we have the pleasure of being joined by Igor Jablokov. And he is the founder and CEO of Prion, which is an AI company delivering an enterprise knowledge management platform, which recently raised $100 million. Pryon's natural language processing tool ingests and transforms data into experiences that solve critical business challenges. Previously at IBM, he essentially grew impatient with the gap between the invention and commercialization of AI, and he left to start his own cloud computing pioneer, Yap. 5 years later, Amazon acquired the company for its AI expertise and machine learning technology, which is now embedded in billions of Alexa-powered devices. Welcome to the show today, Igor.
Thanks for having me.
But super excited to have you on. For those that don't know, I first met Igor at the AI4 conference in Vegas earlier this year, and I've been trying to get him on the show ever since. He is a very busy man, got a tight schedule, and I'm super excited to finally get you on. What I would love to kick this off with, before we get into what you're doing at Prion, I'm really curious because this isn't typically something that every entrepreneur does, but I'd love to know, what was kind of the aha moment that made you take a step away from IBM and start your own AI venture and kind of get into the space to begin with?
Yeah, so I would say most entrepreneurs probably have something gnawing at them, spidey sense tingling and things of that sort, that something's going to become a big deal. And no matter how many no's you get or how many investor review boards that you get rejections and how many business cases are unknown, right, or undefined and things of that sort, but you feel it in your bones that, hey, this is going to be a big deal. Everybody's going to be interacting with this stuff. Everybody's forgetting a lot of this early AI was centered around, some humanist themes, things like trying to solve for accessibility issues. So our chief scientist at the time was a blind fellow, TV Raman, who's now a senior scientist at Google. We were trying to prevent all of you crashing into trees and telephone poles, right? So texting while driving, we were trying to repair that. We were trying to bridge cultural divides, right? If you think, with early machine translation, how do we get people from, that are from different cultures, different languages and things of that sort to understand one another, especially to prevent wars and dysfunctions that we're experiencing all over the world stage. I mean, those, that's why I'm a little bit saddened whenever I hear terms like, if software is eating the world, AI is its teeth. I mean, Jaden, you've heard me say no. Early AI was supposed to be the heart, right, of and the finest expression of technology, because it is the most organic way of interacting with machines, right? Where very few of us turned into mathematicians, computer scientists, computer engineers, data scientists, and the like. Natural language turns the tables around and allows democratization of computing resources so that everyone, can benefit from their capabilities. That's what enthralled us. And so we did discover, the baby version of Watson, in those labs. In fact, there's some reporters out there that are going to prove that a lot of the modern AI that whether it's at Apple, whether it's at Microsoft, whether it's at Google, whether it's in other places, actually originated from our lab at IBM Research.
That's incredible. So obviously you were discovering some really incredible things over at IBM. What made you leave that? What I've heard you say you were kind of frustrated with the pace there, but what did that look like, and why did you feel like you needed to get out of what could have been like a huge company with amazing resources to build stuff and start out on your own where you're kind of starting from scratch?
Yeah, but like they say, all politics is local. So you assume that a congressperson or senator is making decisions on a national scale, right, to benefit an international community. But the reason for that expression is the fact that they're pretty much only doing what their voters and constituents want back at home, because they're always terrified of being voted out of office. So while you may think that IBM is making these global decisions to benefit themselves with respect to where they're investing in technology, right, similar to all politics is local, you have, divisions and departments making smaller decisions in order to safeguard their roles, responsibilities, authorities, the other products that they're tending to as well, right? Because they typically have a portfolio, right? It's, economics is a study of the allocation of scarce resources. So if there's something else that's closer in, that's not a decade plus away in terms of, economic productivity to the business, they're probably not going to be greenlighting it and turning it into a product. So that's part of those things. Now, I'll tell you, it didn't mean that we weren't doing early testing and hiding this in places. So here's a big surprise. When you guys talk to Amazon Echoes and you ask it to turn on like a timer in your kitchen, like for how long your eggs should boil or things of that sort, we hid in Miami Children's Hospital in the operating room these multimodal browsers, essentially AI assistants that the surgeon could start and stop surgical timers as they were working on young little patients.
So that's incredible.
So the things that you think are so, lowbrow and just like easy little functions, also were tested like in 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005 in very serious environments. We had this stuff in concert. I was working with the then chief information officer at Wake Forest University. We had it on university campuses where you could, ask questions about where's the shuttle bus or, is the laundromat open and things of that sort. Right. So I think this is now with the city of Amarillo, Texas. Now they're taking this style of technologies through a new form of digital human that we co-developed with Dell for civic services. But back then we were testing it for campus services. And then the third example, right? All of you now have these AI assistants, right, through these hardware devices haunting your kitchens and bedrooms. We hid these technologies in Epcot Center, in the world of tomorrow for children to waddle past, just to see how people would react to speaking to these, style of things. It was installed on a PC behind a pane of glass and things of that sort. And that's what later, we were able to get to a price point that everybody could have versus a specialized exhibit. So the hints of this stuff were there. We were experimenting it. And in 2006, Cartman in South Park would say, "Screw you guys, I'm going home." And we kicked off our top scientists and engineers and got started on our last journey.
That's amazing. So, ultimately you ran Yap for 5 years. Amazon acquired it. You obviously had some very solid technology that they wanted to incorporate. You're then embedded into Amazon. So now you're into another major company. Did you, with that deal, since I'm not super familiar with it, did you stay on Amazon and work there some sort of vesting period or something, or was it just an acquisition of the company without you?
Yeah, there was like a couple, 2 or 3 years worth of a vesting period associated with it. But, I kind of already had the strategic plan kind of laid out in terms of how this stuff, would essentially, roll out, if you will. Remember, the thing that people know as AI assistants was a Skunksworks program, in our entity. It was still ahead of its time. There was no hardware that could really support it. So I don't know if any of you, have seen HBO's comedy Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
but they lampooned a conference called TechCrunch Disrupt. So I presented at the very first one in 2007, and I pulled out a Razr flip phone and I spoke into it, and crickets. Nobody knew what the heck I was showing them. Andreessen was there, Marissa Mayer was there, Ki Kawasaki was there. And what they didn't know at the time is that we were secretly working with Apple on a prototype of Siri before they acquired the SRI team. That's how early on they were thinking about these natural user interfaces, because of course that's their shtick. There's some of the biggest, implementers and researchers in the realm of human factors, right? And user-centered design. So of course they would be interested in these style of things. And that was years before they could build a device that could support such a thing.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. You've obviously been working in this technology for a long time, and you've been working with big companies, IBM, Amazon, Apple, on some of this technology. why do you think it took till this year for, I mean, obviously AI has been incorporated into everything before, and it's not like, oh, AI magically appeared this year, which a lot of consumers may feel like, but why do you think it took to this year for something like ChatGPT to roll out and gain mass adoption? Was it being slow rolled by companies that had the tech? Was there not enough like hardware compute? Were there limitations there? Like what do you think made it happen now?
Yeah, I don't think there's a now, right? I mean, this stuff takes a while. Just like, look, when you guys go into a Trader Joe's and you're surprised by a new fruit, a new vegetable that you haven't seen before, that's not the first time it existed, right? It took a long while for the farmer to feed it and grow it and transport it and put it and for some buyer to say we're going to put this, in our produce department, and then for you to encounter it as well. So as LL Cool J would say, don't call it a chatbot. We've been here for years.
I love it.
It's been gestating for a long while. And you're right. In some cases, you've just expressed that there's different building blocks that all came together between cloud, between GPUs. But also part of what you guys have seen in the last year is the fact that some folks have breached an intellectual firewall and did some things that are taboo in order to have, these modern expressions of technologies that you think you're seeing in the last year with respect to these GPTs, the Bings and the Bards, because they're building themselves off of stolen content and hallucinations.
Okay, yes. I love it. I want to go a little bit deeper into that, but really quick, I would love if you could tell and give everyone kind of an overview of what you're working on today, because ultimately you left Amazon, you're working on something new today. Tell us, or for the last number of years, tell us what you're working on now and why you felt you needed to do this. I heard you say that you felt like people pulled you out of retirement, which you didn't want to do, to force you to to start this company. So tell us about what you're working on.
Yeah, I was working on other things, but look, in 2017, I'm looking around and I'm like, where the heck's the serious AI? Where's the AI at work? Where is it in hospitals? Where is it in power plants? Right? Where is it in, to support civic engagement and the like? I didn't really see anything serious. I mean, we helped trigger the evolution of these technologies into our homes, right? Onto our televisions, onto our mobile phones, into our cars. As to start permeating and aiding our personal lives. But I didn't really see it in more serious use cases as well, which was a little bit maddening, right? I mean, because you have these great brands, right? Like SAP and Salesforce and Oracle and IBM and Microsoft and their ilk. And I'm like, where's the expression of these style of technologies to benefit all of us, during our waking hours? And I didn't see it. And then I started understanding, why doesn't such a thing exist? Well, when all of you, buy one of these HomePods or Amazon Echoes or Google Homes in a Best Buy and you bring it home and you plug it in, right? It immediately lights up, it blinks, it says hello. And you can start talking to it within roughly a couple dozen different domains that are backed by language models. In reality, they're hierarchical language models and things of that sort, news, weather, sports, music, and things of that sort. In order for this to work in more serious pursuits, it would have to be an AI that has no idea what these enterprises are going to put into it, but it has to achieve market-leading accuracy, scale, security, and speed. It has to be a blind trust. It has to be reliable, available, serviceable, and as a result of that, it becomes a little bit of a paradox to solve such a construct. And so I recruited some of the legacy, AI folks that worked on a lot of these very deep problems in the past, from great organizations, from the folks that worked at Watson, IBM Watson, Apple Siri, Amazon Alexa and the like, and we started our journey.
That's amazing. So I've heard really impressive things about your platform, and I recently heard that you saved an electrical provider like $5 million. Tell me a little bit about like some of the success stories of companies actually using your platform.
Yeah, Jaden, I know, accountants are going to be really excited to sharpen their pencils when they hear numbers about that. but that's not the real big deal associated with that benefit. So the energy company in question for years has been trying to develop an AI for their outage and maintenance services, and they poured millions of dollars because they predicted they can reduce the downtime of nuclear power plants by half if they had such a thing. And let's connect those dots. The reason why that's a big deal is the utilities then don't have to spin up fossil fuel burning plants in order to meet the shortfall of base load that exists, especially in deep summer and deep winter months when you have the highest rate of utilization. So obviously connect the dots to climate change, and that's a pretty big deal. More importantly, if any of you have ever seen any documentaries on 3 Mile Island, where we were within 30 minutes of irradiating the eastern seaboard, when Congress did an investigation, they actually found that there were 6 causes to that near disaster. One was a design flaw, one was a faulty valve, 4 out of 6 were knowledge management issues with technicians and engineers getting the right information. So put 2 and 2 together, and that $5 million number is the least of the benefit to having these technologies. It really is going to be creating more resiliency in the power grid, cleaner sources of power, and then also potentially reducing risk for operating these style of power gen modes.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. The benefits are immense, and like you mentioned, it's not just about the dollar figure that someone may bring up. There's so many more benefits. Obviously, what's the benefit of not having nuclear radiation cover the globe? There's a lot of things. So you recently raised $100 million for Prion. I would love to hear a little bit about your vision for what what you're planning on doing with your raise, and really the vision of where Prion goes in the future.
Yeah. So look, everybody should feel goosebumps now, right? Not only within our lifetime, but inside of this decade. It's not about chatbots. It's not about AI assistants. Everybody's barking up a wrong tree when they hear about these things. But the reason why you should feel goosebumps is for thousands of years, people have imagined what life would be like on the world stage if we had a Tower of Babel. That's what's, within our grasp, right? So imagine that it's going to be a mandatory acquisition of these style of cognitive platforms into the enterprise software stack, because for the first time ever, it's within the realm of possibility to insert a layer that is agnostic to human languages. It doesn't matter what things are authored in, right? Or captured in, or recorded in. It won't matter the systems of record that these things, sit inside of, whether it's the SAPs, ERP systems, whether it's in CRM systems, whether it's things in things like DocuSign or Oracle Financials or SharePoints. And it's not going to matter what the underlying object type is, whether it's audio, video, images, or text of some sort. For the first time ever, we're going to be able to fuse all of these things into a knowledge fabric where you can drop a prompt on top and it'll answer questions, it'll perform workflows, and it'll essentially, automate certain functions for these organizations that will create new opportunities and risk reduction as well. That's the big deal. But this has been a long time in coming. All of you shouldn't think that, oh, look, I can just download this open source stuff and I can deliver it, because the platform that's able to do that in terms of connecting to all of these systems, in terms of multimodal ingest, the synthesis of this into a unified model, and then the connectivity of this to all the channels where end users can be, whether they're employees, customers or partners of those organizations, is a highly complex beast. And we've been working on this for 20, 30, 40 years. This is not something that you can just download, a couple pieces of kit from Hugging Face and think that you can deliver into market.
So something that a lot of people are concerned about right now is the extinction. Like, some people talk about AI causing human extinction, all these kinds of things. Obviously, I think a lot of that's far overblown. But I think in that kind of line of thinking, are there any AI companies today that are concerning you, and any things you're seeing in the industry right now that are kind of causing red flags or concern?
I mean, I could turn it around. I think there's one company that's obviously causing a red flag and concern for everybody, and that's OpenAI. Frankly, many people are calling it a criminal organization. I mean, to go from nonprofit to for-profit, to have, pirated content as part of their models. The fact that they allow these hallucinations that are emitting, non-factual information, right? And then not, tagging it as such or having no idea that it's non-factual. The fact that they're telling people that you can use it for mental health support. The fact that it's literally in their mission statement that they want to do an AGI and put many people out of work, right? And they don't understand the disruptions that they may cause. Yeah, I mean, that's one that, people are going to be looking at rather closely, especially as you had the executive order here recently that's imparting some knowledge of how you regulate this environment. But guess what? AI's been here for a while. That's why in 2014, the Atlantic, did an expose on Facebook's use of these style of technologies to put good news and bad news, in social media feeds, A/B testing this against teens that may have caused some suicides, right? So, I mean, unencumbered and without penalties. It's not just putting words in there and saying, hey, here's some general guardrails that you need to be, developing the AI with, but to have some honest, to goodness penalties. This is why a properly constructed board of directors are fiduciaries, and they watch over an organization and they review financials and governance systems and checks and balances, because there are very real criminal penalties if those boards, do things wrong. And we've seen that, in the last, few days with SBF and FTX.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking at that case. We've obviously seen, like, Forbes has done a number of issues on big people. SBF was one of them, and a number of people that were kind of lauded at the beginning as these incredible tech whizzes who ended up just being a big fraud. There's that one, and then of course there's Elizabeth Holmes and others. Something that I would love to get your opinion on when we see Sam Altman going to Congress and talking about how we need more AI regulation and whatnot. In light of what you mentioned, do you think his true goal is AI regulation for safer AI, or is it more of a regulatory moat that he's trying to build?
Yeah, so your intuition is spot on. When I've met banking CEOs in the past, they relished regulation, right? Think about the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank, right? The former CEO of Silicon Valley Bank. So they love regulation to create moats from new intruders into their respective categories, but not so much that it's going to constrict their freedom of action and certainly slow down their gravy trains. And so their lobbyists are going to be tearing that EO a new one, right, to essentially kind of smooth it out so that it blocks, new upstarts and mid-market companies from going in and bulking up in terms of becoming a biomass threat, to their gravy trains, but not at the same time as constricting themselves. I mean, this is why, Meta always kind of, was Teflon coated in trying to find ways to maximize the human population at a world stage that they can, throw onto their platform so that they can do advertisements against, and never really came out, for against certain social issues or pretended, well, it's not our job to, deal with disinformation about vaccines or deal with, election fraud and things of that sort. They just played the Pontius Pilate, role at an international stage.
Yeah. So I think that's very interesting on the topic of Meta. So I'll be honest, from my perspective, I'd love to hear yours. From my perspective, I've actually been really impressed by a lot of what Meta has been doing in kind of this AI space. I typically wasn't a very big Meta fan, but Jan LeCun over there, he's been doing some very interesting things with open source. A lot of people have been saying, look, open source is dangerous. What they're doing is dangerous because you're allowing this model out to the public where they can figure out how to do anything and create, bioweapons and other things. What's your opinion on the open source angle? Is it as dangerous as people say?
Well, I don't know of a single trillion-dollar company that open sources their critical IP, right? So this can't be their critical IP if it's open source. It just stands to reason. And you're right. I mean, it's also paradox, right? By open sourcing things, it's more transparent, but it also democratizes access to nefarious actors, right? Even if only the 1% of 1% of 1% are going to be doing bad things with it to launch disinformation campaigns and attack elections and looking for bioweapons and things of that sort. That's still a lot of people that are going to be looking at doing damaging things with these things on the world stage as well. Also, I don't know how open source it is, or you can't commercially really build anything viable on that, because if you read the terms and conditions, it prohibits use of this in critical infrastructure. And so those power plants that we talked about earlier in the show can't use it for that. Right. So it's sort of like Lucy, holding the football in front of Charlie Brown. And so, and then she pulls it at the last moment and says, oh, you can't do anything that's commercially viable against that, because guess what? They're going to safeguard that for themselves. So that is an example similar to your previous question on regulation, where, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They're like, hey, here it is. We all look like good guys relative to, what OpenAI is doing, not showing you the internals of their stuff. But then on the flip side, don't do anything interesting with it. We're going to hold that for ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I think we're seeing this from a lot of the big players in the space, this kind of bait and switch. I mean, of course, OpenAI is like the most blatantly kind of like gross bait and switch up. We're an open source company. No, we're a closed source, raised $10 billion company. And then Facebook, which is like, or Meta, whatever, we're an open source company, but you can't do anything commercial with it. And we're not really an open source company. Something that a company we have not mentioned in the mix here that you brought up earlier on is Apple, right? A lot of people are saying Apple is late to the AI game. Of course, we know they've been integrating little features into the iPhone and their technology in the AI space, but they kind of haven't had this big AI banner, to the point where recently on a earnings call a couple days ago, Tim Cook, a lot of people have this meme where it's like, say the line. So he said the line and he said, we're investing heavily into generative AI, when people are kind of pushing back on them not doing AI. I'd love to get your take on this. Is Apple behind on this, or is Apple slower and more methodical? Or is that the angle that they're saying so it doesn't look like they're behind?
No, it's the latter. I mean, they're great people there. They care about, folks' privacy. They care a lot. And it's just good people. They're not going to be throwing out a sloppy incarnation of this style of technology. And look at it, every year when you buy their devices, it's the finest representation in balance of these style of technologies together. At times, the Android platforms tend to be, N+1 in terms of pushing the realm of certain technologies, but then the battery life is affected as well. Mm-hmm. So you got to look at Apple as an entity that finds aesthetic equilibrium in whatever technologies, it adopts, into its products, services, software, hardware, and things of that sort. On our board is a former Apple executive, and that's not an accident. It's because we actually do share that worldview in terms of responsible AI, not just being lip service, but being our birthright as well. And there's plenty of other examples, that we can give in terms of what we've done in the past and what we've done in this system as well, where while everybody else was crawling all over the web, grabbing content, like it's supermarket sweeps, putting as many hams into the shopping cart as possible in order to, increase the price tag at the checkout counter. We weren't doing that. In Prion ingests the 4 Ps that you trust: public information that you trust, proprietary information that's unique to your organization, published content that you've properly licensed from creators, and then personal content unique to you. So that's how we contrast from other folks' AI platforms. What's similar to other AI platforms is we've always believed in natural language, being the ultimate API. It democratized access You and I could talk to each other before we learn how to read and write. Humans are a critical part of knowledge workflows because we consume, curate, and contribute knowledge. And so I do believe in their worldview. We share their worldview. We're careful. It took years, to put even Prion into production as well. But that's why we're drifting towards what the core IP of what makes a pharma company, or what makes an energy company, or to support hospitals and civic institutions and things of that sort. That's why, Dell could adopt something like this. That's why NVIDIA is one of our clients. This is why World Economic Forum uses us for strategic intelligence. So there's a lot of surprises out there in terms of the major brands that are associated with us. And that's because we're as careful as they are.
Yeah, I think that's super critical. And I think, honestly, a lot of the companies that will be successful in this big wave of kind of AI interest we're seeing are ones that put that as one of their core focuses. So that's, that's great, I think, from my perspective, to see that's a focus for you. Something that recently happened, Elon Musk was talking to the UK Prime Minister, the big AI summit, and he said, I'll give a little quote, and I want to get your thoughts on it. He said, "There'll come a point when no job is needed. You can have a job if you want to have a job for personal satisfaction, but the AI will be able to do everything." He then pretty much says AI is kind of like a genie in a bottle. And he said one of the challenges in the future will be, how do we find meaning in life if we have a magic genie that can do everything you want? What's your thoughts on this? Is this realistic? Is this viable?
Look, I don't envy all of your audience and your listeners, because you have to go through a lot of content, right? Whether it's written content, podcasts like this, and things of that sort, and separate the carnival barkers from the true practitioners. All right, so they're talking about all of this other stuff, and here's the deal, guys and gals. Where is this in our hospitals? Where is it in our power plants? Well, they're all talking about AGI is going to do this, and all these people are going out of work, and it's kill us all, and all of this other nonsense. The true, salt of the earth fact is we don't have this in serious places that need to benefit our communities. We don't have that. So while they're playing this weird game of spy versus spy and almost like some sort of childish high school version of debate team, I want to put this in real places, right? And look, the pandemic showed us who the true superheroes are of our communities, right? Guess what? We still needed food to be grown. We still needed it to be delivered, right? We still needed water, right? We still needed hospitals and all of this other stuff, right? We need our military to defend us. There's all these things that are out there, right? We need, folks to put out fires, and folks, with ambulances and solving crimes and all of these things that we consider these essential workers. We needed the lights to work. And so during the pandemic, I think there was higher appreciation for the folks that generally preserve our way of life. And they have not a single line of code that's in use in order to reduce the knowledge friction that they have. People need to know something in order to do something. So how do you reduce the distance between knowledge and those individuals as well? That's what I tend to focus on, and that's what I'm passionate about. That's why I can go to folks, from Google and Amazon and all of these great brands and say this: post-pandemic, as we see the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, in front of us, between wars, between pestilence, literally, unfortunately, right? Economic distress and climate change. Are you done serving ads in front of people's faces? Are you done putting videos in front of teenagers' eyes? Let's go ahead and work on something a little bit more serious to benefit them. And guess what? By benefiting them, it benefits us, right? Our educators, right? And all of these other things. That's the vision that I set out. The rest of these folks out there trying to carve out regulations so they have freedom of action and blockade others and terrify people with how, look at all these negative things that can happen. Look, I want to make tools that I can put in somebody's hand like a Jimmy Carter to build habitat for humanity. And yet all they talk about is how these hammers are going to go in Ted Bundy's hands, and they're going to be bonking people over the head, completely divorcing themselves from the fact that it can help people. I don't need to make a super app X to figure out how to send people money. Venmo already exists. These people constantly want to re-engineer and regurgitate things that we already have that work well. You don't need another Google. You have Google. Knock it off. But we don't have these things in more serious pursuits. That's the birthright of Prime. That's what we're working on. That's what we're working towards. And hopefully, some of you that can hear me, will join me in this journey, either in this organization or in your own respective organizations as well. We have enough filters to change our faces into pandas. We don't need any more.
I think you bring up such a critical point. I recently saw a quote somewhere, and roughly it was saying, like, we probably would have had the next, Ford or the next, super innovative company if all of the engineering talent over the last 10 years hadn't been put into like just little SaaS products that weren't super important, face filters for your phone. A lot of people criticize the entire crypto industry as being a colossal waste of time, energy, and talent. What do you think, for let's say developers or people working in technology today, what is a piece of advice you feel like you could give them on what to focus on that truly matters and how they can find that, right? I mean, a lot of people are just looking for a job. This is what Meta told me I have to work on. I'm going to make the face panda filter. What's your advice to those people?
Look, I say some of these comments as tongue in cheek as well. Look, calling a lot of these efforts completely ludicrous and useless is disingenuous in some ways, in the same way that all of us as children, played with dolls, played with Legos, played with, little vehicles, little cars and things of that sort, crayons and things of that sort. That was healthy. My parents were both artists, right? So that creativity in terms of trying to throw spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks and playing with these technologies and how they intersect with user experiences, that was healthy. I just am, and now, expressing to all of you to channel your talents and your education, right, and your experiences towards positive works. That's all. In however you define, not how I define what is a positive work, but in the way that you define what a positive work is and what your contributions could be to benefiting the preservation of life in all of its forms, not just for humans, for animals and plants as well. So whatever you can do, right? Call it your 20% time, call it your 100% time, whatever it is that you're personally passionate about, start thinking about, hey, I know that there's an economic incentive with building these style of technologies. Put that aside, similar to, to how Jaden, asked that question about the $5 million business case impact for that energy company, and look at the second order effects. Hey, how does this improve climate change? How does this democratize access to underserved, communities? Hey, how does this prevent wars and strife? How does this inform people? How does it make a smarter electorate? How does, this open up the aperture to economic mobility? Start asking those style of questions, and guess what? We're talking more about those things than about what version of LLM you're using, and hey, should you fine tune this, or how do you guardrail that? Who cares? The technology that we could be talking about on this podcast is as perishable as those fruits and vegetables that you buy from Trader Joe's. You got to eat it inside of 24 hours, otherwise it's useless.
Igor, thank you so much for your advice. Your insights has been absolutely phenomenal having you on the show today. For the listener, if you're interested in finding out more about what Igor is working on, I'll leave a link in the show notes to Prion if you're interested at working there, or if you're a company interested in using his technology, you can find out everything you need there. Thank you so much for tuning in to the AI Chat podcast today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and make sure to rate us wherever you get your podcasts.